What about it, YouTube? All right. Will the real low IQ noticer please stand up? I mean, I'm sorry, but Nick Fuentes is just showing how wet under the ears he is. He has no reference point. He's what? He wants to talk about how he's been canceled and how he's suffered under the Stasi tattletale network that came from one side of the political spectrum and attacked him. But has he ever had to turn an application into Walgreens? I, until that day, I don't want to hear about it and then have to hear him talk about ruining people's lives. People who are already emotionally unstable, people who are already sick, probably a lot of reasons for that, but none the least of it is that it's happening to you too. Like everyone's adrenal glands are just worn out, right? We have adrenal burnout from all of the gaslighting, from all of the things that never get resolved, right? So, uh, time after time, events happen. You can't. The worst thing in the world is the official story. It's filled with such aides that you you can't force yourself to be that retarded to try to accept it. So you have that factor, which is which adds to the trauma. Again, we're all being fed just nonstop machine gun fire of ultra trauma, ultra violence. And this has a traumatic effect. And this has an emotional effect. And if you're not careful, then you're going to make a decision based upon anger. So your righteous anger and your righteous fury should be in the defense of Christ only. If you get off track of that, then you're falling into a trap, I promise you. I had a conversation with ChatGPT about a letter that Mazzini got from Albert Pike. Albert Pike, lots of things, Grand Poobah of the Masons, wrote their holy book, whatever, Morals and Dogma, um, a pinnacle of his time in Masonry, and also a Confederate general who was sort of stabbed in the South in the back, and ends up with a statue in Washington that got tore down during the statue thing coming down, statues, being attacked. But Trump has decided that it's really important to restore that one. Like Robert E. Lee, not so much. Jefferson Davis, not so much. Right. But certainly Albert Pike needs his. So he writes this letter and he lays out 3 world wars. And I'm talking to ChatGPT, and you have to be careful because they want to say it's fake. But if you put the terms and you word your questions right, and you kind of force the situation to be confronted with some truth and fact. I mean, if you just ask it like, how well does these two things line up? Actual recorded history and how it's unfolded, and what Albert Pike apparently wrote in 1871. Then it tries to say, oh, it was probably most likely fake, and can't find the original, and started to sort of surface in the 1920s and to the 1950s. But magically, even if it started in the 1920s, I don't care, everything lines up. Like ChatGPT has to admit that everything lines up, that everything that Albert Pike predicted or spoke about lines up. It's kind of the same thing as a Protocols of Zion. Magically, everything lines up. Magically, historically, it doesn't matter how you slice the orange up, it always comes up. You know what I mean? The middle of the Tootsie Roll Pop, there's always the usual suspects. Always, always. And so, we've all had this trauma, and like I was doing in other videos about being stuck on Epstein's Lolita Express and having to watch all this trauma around us and having to watch somebody get brutally raped in front of us or something. And then if we see it and we identify it and we say like, oh, that was a pedophile Jew, and then they say, oh, you're anti-Semite, and that didn't happen, and that's not, I mean, that's how ridiculous it is, right? Like, again, you're being forced to accept things you can't accept. There's all these different rabbit holes, but it's always touching those nerves and retouching those nerves, and it's taking time out of your life and away from whatever else you might be doing, right? So your life's being stolen from you, regurgitating and reliving trauma, right? And then the natural reaction to that is anger. The natural reaction to that is to be upset. And I've suffered through this, right? I did videos a few months ago about, J fatigue and how I was just done, just like, and even some of my recent videos, and I got kind of a hard line about it, but I'm realizing more and more, especially right now in the wake of everything, that you have got to align yourself with Christ. All right. You've got to have charity. You can't lose that. If you're going to be American, if you're going to be American made, if you're going to, then you need to defend the Constitution. Like I was saying earlier about Nick and not having a reference point. He's never had like a real job. Like, tell you what, dude, you don't have a reference point because look, I came up in the 70s and 80s. Beautiful, dude. Beautiful. The 90s wasn't until the mid 90s. I'm 25 and here comes cell phones and internet, and it's all exciting at the time, bro. But you have no reference point of being stuck with nothing like through the 70s and stuff, but like network television, and then being stuck throughout the 80s and into the 90s with cable news. Okay. And then the only thing outside of that, the alt news would have been radio. That's what we had, bro. And we were living through sort of you want to talk about a golden age. There's hardly any wars going on or any conflicts. So on the surface, it was fun and great, and music was great, and music and art spoke to the culture still, and movies and stuff were awesome, and it was exciting. And I mean, go back and look at the movies. I mean, nothing touches all that cool stuff that came out in that time. The music is just great, and the feeling and the mood and the patriotism around 1976 and even the Reagan administration, whatever you want to say about it. It brought a feeling of patriotism. It brought a feeling of unity. There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, in my experience, there wasn't this division. Not even to a small degree. There was inner city violence. There was horrible things going on, but it wasn't like today where if that's what you focus on and you don't have a reference point because all you've had is this alt news, and then and so like it's all emotional, and that's what it's always, social media and everything else, the algorithm and everything, it's meant to capture your emotions, capture your attention, again, and steal your time and your life away and get you all fired up and agitated, turn you into some kind of weaponized chaos agent towards your neighbor. And that's what I see, unfortunately, with Nick now. Like, why, dude? Why would you were doing so well? Like, speaking of Christian and Christ-like attitudes towards the world around you, and now all of a sudden you're like, burn it down, Stasi, tattletale networks, and cancel culture, as long as I'm behind it. I mean, listen to yourself. I can't believe it, man. You let me down. And anyone that's fallen into that is a trap. Like Mazzini said, I'm bouncing around a little bit, but Mazzini says about the Third World War. They haven't called it a Third World War, but if you listen to what he describes, the first one goes down exactly right. The second one goes down exactly right. The third one goes down exactly how it's laying out, except even ChatGPT admits that the final thing hasn't happened. And what was the final thing that Albert Pike talked about is how everybody would be so nauseated and so tired and so fatigued, they would look for any answer to just stop it. They would give up their rights. They would forget about the Constitution. They would just say, whatever it takes, it's got to stop this mess. And I'm saying that's the biggest mistake you can make. Okay? Now, what has helped me to sort of process this trauma differently and to stay on track and not get caught up with, you know, these MF and, inner city people just need to be blotted out. And, now look, I do have a hard line about a certain group of people. They need to be reckoned with. They are the source of the suffering for the world. And I don't care what Nick has to say about it. Look, 2 seconds later, 2 seconds into it, George Zinn, are you kidding me? 2 seconds into it, George Zinn. 5 seconds into it, a Chabad Lubavitch guy, billionaire, in his plane takes off and turns off his transponder. That's all I need to know, bro. That's all. I don't care. All the rest of it is just whatever. It's just like 9/11, and it was Jewish space lasers, or there was no planes, or it was thermite, or okay, it doesn't matter. It's fake and gay. It's fake and gay, and there's Jays all around. Silverstein and the dancing guys and everything else. That's all I need to know. I don't need to have like this tons of evidence that it was a certain group. Like, I understand already. Once you start licking the Tootsie Roll Pop, what you're going to find in the middle of the Tootsie Roll. I already know. So he's all like, oh yeah, kindness, you won't show us brave, and you're making us all look bad, and that's low IQ. Dude, will the real low IQ noticer please stand up? Your righteous anger, and now you've turned your righteous anger against your neighbor. Now it's just like that Bible Revelations about man against, or neighbor. Maybe it's not in Revelation, I don't remember, but in the New Testament talks about father against son, son against brother, brother against brother, all that mess. Okay, and that's what's happening. So I've been trying to warn about these traps. Like, I don't want to not get along with black people. I want to have charity towards them. I want to offer them the olive branch. I meet people individually every day at where they're at, even the Jays for that matter, even the Jays. But again, it's like if the blacks were the ones, and I mean, I guess maybe some of them Hebrew national ones would be on the same level in some kind of way. But as soon as you're saying that you're chosen, all right, check this out. I ran into this thing where, oh my gosh, this Jay is saying how he, the title of it is like a Jay comes to Jesus, right? So people love that, right? Look, out of his mouth, out of the gates, this is what he says. He says, when I was a young boy, I was amazed at how in my family and in my peer group of Jays, there were no slurs. And hanging out with the non-Jays, going to activities, I was amazed at how they always were using these racial slurs and other slurs about homosexuals and etc. and how different. And honestly, I have to tell you that that's probably the reason at a young age that I started to think that we were better and chosen. I'm willing to unpack that, to just try to unpack that shit that just, I was like, dude, if I could get you in my hands right now, like that stuff enrages me and turns me into the thing I'm warning about against. Because do you hear all that? Like the excuse for them, like they're chosen, they're better, they're above because they aren't racist. Wait a second, dude. As soon as you say you're better, you're above, you're chosen, by de facto, you're supremacist. You're racially supremacist, and that is the highest level of racism. So GTFO with this story about you hanging out with slurs. By the way, you're totally ignoring the fact that your Yiddish is nothing but a book of slurs. That's all it is. That's all your Yiddish is a book of slurs. And you're going to tell us how better you are and how it made you feel better to not be brought up, in a religion that uses slurs about people. Are you friggin' kidding me right now? Are you friggin' kidding me? It's like Ben Shapiro's telling us how much they're feeding them while they're starving them. And it's like, it's just like, I'm popping around, but that's the focus, man. That's the focus. That's the focus. These other issues, 19th Amendment and the recent immigration crisis and these people who are Johnny-come-latelys and don't identify and don't integrate and aren't here for the right reasons and came in here on on you know, J auspices, right? For lack of better words right now. But yeah, so we can deal with all that. But really, people should be focused on, again, your righteous indignation being in defense of Jesus Christ and bouncing around all over the place. But coming back a little bit on another point, the reason why I've been able to sort of mature, maybe is the right word, and I've always been trying to avoid traps and help people to avoid traps with this channel. That's the whole thing. So I think that one of the reasons is I had, a super loved one, a couple of them, my father's dog, my dog. I mean, when you really experience trauma, like close to you, like something you loved is gone, um, and that the emptiness is felt from that. Look at the Palestinians, even how meek they are, and how like they're not like "F you, we're gonna cancel you, we're gonna get you fired, calling your boss, man." They've been through that trauma to a point where they're numb. They don't want to. They don't. They just want it to stop. They want the suffering to stop. They don't want to contribute to it. They don't want to be a part of it. They don't get any benefit from being angry and hateful. And so it's with a very sober, calm, and Christ-like attitude that we need to focus on what needs to be blotted out and what needs to change. To some, it's going to look like a heavy hand. To some, it's going to appear as a furor, but it needs to be very well spoken and articulate and calm and clear, and just saying like, this should never happen. This should never happen. A lot of things just should never happen. We can have a nation that's respected just like everybody else can have a nation that's respected. The people who really, not the fake people who talk crap that's so ridiculous, but the people who really built this country and gave us the experiment of the Constitution and our rights and checks and balances. Sorry, I've been talking so much, I'm starting to cough. I need a drink. I'll shut it up here. We need to honor them, I think. We need to respect them. We need to acknowledge that we deserve to be respected. It doesn't mean that we aren't charitable. It doesn't mean that you can't hang out with us. But there, oh, and also, we need to talk about this. Love your enemies, all right? Is that the best way to say it right now? You've got to try to be charitable to people. Understand that they've been turned into weaponized chaos agents. Understand that all of this trauma and things, they're interpreting it different. That they can get on ChatGPT and they can get answers that tell them how smart they are and how you're brilliant and you're describing the correct problem, and the problem is right-wing Christians and their extreme views on LGBT. So I understand that when I get on ChatGPT, that in a large way it's confirmation of my bias, But all of that's facts about Mazzini and how it's all. I mean, this is stuff that goes back before, like I said, the 20s and 50s. So that's before internet. Okay, before a lot of things, television. So if that's when it came out, I mean, how's it so coincidental that it matches perfectly? All right, I've been all over the place. Came this way, came back around, switched it up, came back around again. Hopefully I got everything in that I wanted to say. But will the real low IQ noticer please stand up? Because you're falling into a trap. Look up the letter that Mazzini wrote, that Albert Pike wrote Mazzini. I'll try to put it in the description. All right. God bless.